Caught my sister in bed with my fiancé. Family forgave them, ambushed me at Christmas, and tried to reunite us. So I ghosted them forever and built a new life. Before I dig into the crazy mess, let me give you some backstory. Growing up in a small town outside Milwaukee, I always thought my family was my foundation. We weren't the type of people to leave things unsaid or go months without speaking. My sister Dana and I were close in that competitive two girls under one roof kind of way. She was a year younger than me, and we'd always been compared to each other. She was the charming, free-spirited type while I was the one with a plan. Our brother, Matt, was the baby in our dad's shadow, always soaking up every ounce of attention he could get. Our parents, Chris and Joan, were typical Midwest parents. Dad ran the household with an iron will, and Mom was the type to crack jokes and grill steaks like it was her personal hobby. I thought I had it all figured out. A stable family, siblings I could trust, and a fiancé who I believed was my soulmate. Ethan came into my life during a group project in my junior year at UW-Madison. He had this magnetic energy about him that made you want to be in his orbit. He was ambitious, confident, and ridiculously attractive. I fell for him fast. By the end of the semester, we were a couple. It felt like a whirlwind, but I didn't question it because it seemed perfect. I imagined our future together. Careers, kids, everything. One November, I proposed to him. It wasn't some grand gesture, just the two of us on a crisp autumn evening. He said yes, and we started planning our wedding for the following summer. It felt like the beginning of the life I'd always dreamed of, and then it all imploded. In March, I had a random slow Friday at work. I decided to surprise Ethan with his favorite takeout and spend the evening together. When I walked into our apartment, everything felt off. His shoes were by the door, but the place was eerily quiet except for faint laughter coming from the bedroom. My stomach tightened. Something felt wrong, but I brushed it off thinking maybe he was watching a funny video or on the phone with a friend. When I opened the bedroom door, my world shattered. There they were, Ethan and Dana tangled up in bed. Ethan was wearing the oversized t-shirt I had given him for Valentine's Day, the one with the cheesy heart print. It wasn't hard to put two and two together. They froze, both of them looking like deer in headlights. It's funny how silence can say so much. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating. Dana, my own sister, had the audacity to say, "It's not what it looks like." I stared at her, almost laughing at the ridiculousness of it. Ethan didn't say a word, just scrambled to cover himself with a blanket, like it would erase what I'd just seen. I didn't yell. I didn't ask questions. What was the point? The evidence was right in front of me. I looked at Ethan and said, "Pack your stuff and get out." My voice was calm, steady. I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose it. Dana tried to speak something about how it just happened, but I cut her off. "You're dead to me." I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses or fake remorse. There's no "it just happened" when it comes to sleeping with your sister's fiancé. I walked out. I didn't wait for an explanation or a pathetic apology. I grabbed my keys and drove to a friend's house. That night, as I stared at the ceiling, the reality of it all sunk in. My fiancé, the man I planned to marry, and my sister, someone I trusted, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. It wasn't just about the cheating. It was the fact that they'd both actively chosen to destroy something I valued so deeply. The day after I caught Ethan and Dana, I didn't think things could get worse, but, of course, they did. While I was at work, Ethan moved out of the apartment. I'd already told him to pack his stuff and leave, so I figured that was the end of it. But when I came home that evening, there was a note on the counter sitting right where we used to keep a framed picture of us. It was short, but not sweet. He wrote that he fell in love with Dana and never meant to hurt me, followed by some garbage about hoping I could find it in my heart to forgive them. He had the nerve to finish the note with, "I hope you can still be happy for us one day." Happy for them? I wanted to laugh, but it wasn't funny. It was infuriating. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. There was nothing left to say to him. The apartment felt eerily quiet without his stuff, but I didn't care. I wanted him out of my life as fast as possible, and now he was. My family found out what happened within a few days. I didn't tell them. I'm guessing Ethan or Dana spilled the beans. My dad, Chris, called me immediately. He was furious. Not at me, but at Dana. He kept saying how he couldn't believe his own daughter would betray me like that. "She's not welcome here," he said over and over again. At first, it felt good to have him on my side, but I wasn't naive enough to think it would last. My dad's loyalty has always been conditional. He's the type who prides himself on keeping the family together even if it means sweeping massive betrayals under the rug. I figured it was only a matter of time before he started defending Dana. My mom, Joan, was a different story. When I finally answered one of her calls, she didn't say much. She just sighed and said, "Well, I guess things like this happen sometimes." I couldn't believe it. She wasn't angry, upset, or even surprised. She treated it like Dana spilling coffee on my shirt instead of nuking my relationship and my trust in her. Matt, my younger brother, tried to be supportive, but I could tell he was conflicted. He'd call to check on me and say he couldn't believe what Dana and Ethan did, but there was always hesitation in his voice. He was caught between me and the rest of the family, and it was obvious. For weeks, I ignored most of their calls. I didn't have the energy to rehash what happened or hear excuses about why I should let it go. Instead, I threw myself into work. It was the only thing keeping me sane. My boss, Katie, noticed I was putting in extra hours and asked if everything was okay. I didn't tell her the full story, but I admitted I was dealing with some personal stuff. That's when she mentioned the Indianapolis office. Apparently, they'd been struggling to find someone to lead the team there, and Katie thought I'd be a perfect fit. It was a promotion and a chance to get out of Milwaukee, far away from Dana, Ethan, and all the mess they'd created. I didn't hesitate. I told her I was interested. When I told my parents about the relocation, my mom just said, "Good for you. A fresh start might be what you need." My dad, on the other hand, acted like I'd announced I was moving to Mars. He cried and begged me to reconsider. "What about family dinners? What about Christmas? You can't just leave us behind, Anna." I told him I wasn't leaving them behind. I was leaving Dana behind. "She's not part of this family anymore," he said firmly. But I didn't believe him. My dad has a way of saying one thing and doing the exact opposite when it suits him. By July, my gut feeling was proven right. Dana was back in the house. My dad called me one evening, casually dropping that they decided to let her come home for a while because she had nowhere else to go. He acted like it was no big deal, like he wasn't inviting the person who had betrayed me into his home while still expecting me to show up for Sunday dinners. I didn't even try to hide my anger. I told him it was a slap in the face, that he was choosing her over me. He tried to justify it saying, "She's still my daughter. I can't turn her away." I snapped back, "Well, she's not my sister anymore, and I don't want anything to do with her." That's when he started his family unity campaign. He went on and on about how we needed to heal and move forward as a family. It was all code for just forgive Dana, so I don't have to feel guilty about letting her back in. I wasn't having it. I told him plain and simple that I wasn't interested in healing or pretending things were okay. "You want unity? Then maybe stop rewarding the person who blew everything apart," I said before hanging up. After that, I kept my distance. I was busy preparing for the move to Indianapolis anyway. I found a place, packed up my apartment, and started fresh in a city where no one knew my family or my past. Leaving Milwaukee wasn't easy. I had good memories there, and part of me felt like I was letting Dana and Ethan win by leaving. But staying would have been worse. Every street, every restaurant, every shared memory, it all reminded me of what I'd lost. Moving was the only way to truly start over. By the time I left, I'd all but cut ties with my family. I wasn't answering their calls or responding to their texts. Even Matt's attempts to stay neutral didn't matter anymore. They'd made their choice by letting Dana back in, and I'd made mine by leaving them behind. I didn't know what the future would hold, but one thing was clear. I was done being the good daughter who always put family first. From now on, I was putting myself first. It was time to rebuild on my terms. By September, I had gotten comfortable with my new life in Indianapolis. Cutting ties with my family had been the best decision I'd made, even if it wasn't an easy one. Work was going well. I'd started to make some new friends. And the distance from all the chaos was exactly what I needed. Then my dad, Chris, called me. It was his birthday coming up, and he wanted me to come home to celebrate. I hesitated. My relationship with him had been strained ever since he let Dana back into the house. But he kept pushing, saying it would be just the immediate family and that he missed me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The drive to my parents' house was long, giving me way too much time to second-guess my decision. I told myself I was doing this for my dad, even if he had disappointed me. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if it was just him, my mom, and Matt. When I pulled up to the house, I immediately knew something was off. There were way too many cars parked outside. My stomach dropped when I spotted Dana's car in the driveway. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I debated turning around, but I didn't want to give my dad the satisfaction of bailing. I decided to walk in, keep it short, and leave as soon as possible. As soon as I stepped through the door, my dad greeted me with a big smile, acting like nothing had ever happened. "Anna, I'm so glad you came," he said, pulling me into a hug. His energy was over the top, like he was trying to smooth things over with sheer force of will. I glanced around the living room, and there they were, Dana and Ethan, sitting on the couch like they didn't have a care in the world. Ethan even had the nerve to laugh at something Matt said, as I stood there frozen in disbelief. "Why are they here?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. Before my dad could answer, he grabbed my arm and ushered me further into the house. "Let's talk in the living room," he said. Like that would somehow make this less awful. When we got to the living room, my dad started his usual spiel about healing and family. He sat me down and launched into the speech about how Dana and Ethan made a mistake, but were truly sorry, and that it was time to move forward as a family. Dana, ever the shameless one, chimed in with, "I'm sorry, sis. It just happened." She said it like she'd spilled coffee on my shirt instead of nuking my entire life. Ethan followed up with, "We never meant to hurt you," which sounded even more ridiculous coming from him. He wasn't even trying to look remorseful. I stared at them, trying to figure out if they actually believed their own nonsense. The fact that they thought this was even remotely fixable was almost laughable. I leaned forward, looked Dana dead in the eye, and said, "You're a pathetic excuse for a sister." Then I turned to Ethan. "And you, I hope she cheats on you too. You deserve each other." The room went dead silent. My dad started to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I stood up, looked him square in the eye and said, "Enjoy your golden girl. Don't call me again." As I walked out, I could hear my dad trying to calm everyone down, saying something about how I'd come around eventually. Dana didn't say a word, and Ethan just sat there. I got into my car and drove off without looking back. My mind was racing. How could my dad think this was okay? How could he expect me to forgive and forget? Like, this was a minor disagreement instead of a betrayal that ripped my life apart? I spent the rest of the day trying to cool off, but I couldn't shake the anger. I kept replaying the scene in my head, wishing I'd said even more. Part of me wanted to call my dad and unload everything I was feeling, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. He'd already made his choice when he welcomed Dana and Ethan back into his life. That night, I blocked his number. I blocked Dana's too, even though she hadn't reached out in months. I figured it was only a matter of time before she or Ethan tried to clear the air again, and I didn't want to deal with it. For the next few weeks, I kept to myself. Work became my escape, and I threw myself into every project I could find. My coworkers probably thought I was just super dedicated, but the truth was I didn't know how else to channel my frustration. I stopped checking social media too. Seeing pictures of my family would only remind me of what happened, and I didn't need that kind of negativity. I told myself I was better off without them, but it still stung to know that the people I once trusted most had let me down so completely. Eventually, I started to feel a little better. The distance was helping, and I was slowly rebuilding my life. I told myself that I didn't need them, that I could create my own version of family with people who actually cared about me. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. My dad wasn't the type to give up easily, and I had a feeling he'd find another way to drag me back into the drama. For now, though, I was content to keep my distance and focus on myself. Let them have their family unity. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who didn't value me. If they wanted to live in denial about what Dana and Ethan had done, that was their choice. I wasn't going to be a part of it. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I was done letting them dictate my life. From now on, I was living on my own terms. By January, life in Indianapolis had become everything I hoped it would be. It felt good to be miles away from the chaos my family had created. I wasn't waking up every day angry anymore. I had space to breathe, think, and focus on myself. That's when Sam, my distant cousin, slid into my messages. I barely knew him. We'd only met a few times at family events over the years. And even then, I don't think we ever exchanged more than a few words. So when he messaged me out of nowhere saying he was moving to Indianapolis and could use some help settling in, I was skeptical. At first, I debated ignoring his message entirely. My family had proven time and time again that getting involved with them, even peripherally, was a mistake. But part of me felt bad. Sam hadn't done anything to me personally, and he might not even know the full story of what had gone down. Besides, he seemed genuinely nervous about moving to a new city alone. Against my better judgment, I agreed to help him. The weekend came, and I showed up at the address he sent me. It was a small apartment complex in a quieter part of town. And as I pulled into the parking lot, everything seemed normal. That was until I saw the U-Haul truck and two very familiar figures unloading boxes, Dana and my mom. For a moment, I froze, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My first instinct was to back out of the parking lot and never look back. But before I could, the front door of the apartment opened and out came my dad. He spotted me immediately and waved, like this was some sort of family reunion instead of a trap. "Anna, wait," he yelled, jogging toward my car. I put the car in park and stepped out, but I didn't move any closer. "What the hell is this?" I asked, gesturing toward Dana and my mom who were now standing awkwardly by the truck. My dad gave me his usual let's all be reasonable look and started rambling about how Sam just needed some help, and it made sense for the family to come together. It was clear this wasn't about Sam at all. This was about them finding another way to force me into some kind of reconciliation. Dana, ever the master of insincere apologies, stepped forward with tears already welling up in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Anna," she said, her voice trembling like she was auditioning. "I know I messed up. I just want to fix things." I stared at her, completely unmoved. It was the same script she tried at my dad's birthday party, and it was just as pathetic now as it was then. Then my mom decided to jump in. "Anna, come on," she said. Her tone, that irritating mix of exasperation and condescension she always used when she thought I was being unreasonable. "You're holding on to this grudge, and it's tearing the family apart. Be the bigger person." That was it. Hearing her tell me to be the bigger person, as if Dana's actions were some minor mistake I needed to get over, sent me over the edge. She had no idea what it felt like to be betrayed by your own sister, to lose not just a relationship, but the trust you had in the people closest to you. When my mom stepped closer and put a hand on my shoulder, I reacted without thinking. My fist connected with her face before I even realized what I was doing. The sound of it was sharp, and for a moment, everything went still. My mom stumbled back, holding her jaw, and stared at me in shock. Dana looked like she wanted to disappear, and my dad, predictably, burst into tears. "Anna," he sobbed, as if I was the one ruining everything. "How could you?" Dana muttered something under her breath about me going too far, but I didn't even bother responding. I turned and walked back to my car. "Don't follow me," I said over my shoulder. When I got home, I blocked Sam immediately. I didn't care if he was part of the setup or just a pawn in my dad's latest scheme. Either way, I wanted nothing to do with him. That night, I sat on my couch trying to process what had just happened. I wasn't proud of losing my temper, but I didn't regret it either. My mom had crossed a line. And if a punch to the face was what it took to make them understand that I wasn't going to be manipulated, so be it. The worst part was that this wasn't even surprising. My dad had always been willing to bend over backward to protect Dana, no matter how much damage she caused. And my mom, she was more concerned with keeping the peace than actually addressing the problem. I wondered how long they'd been planning this. Had they been talking to Sam for weeks, convincing him to reach out to me, or was it a last-minute idea? Either way, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd walked away before they could rope me back in. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I'd stood my ground, but sadness because it was yet another reminder of how far gone my family was. There was no fixing this. They didn't see Dana and Ethan's betrayal for what it was, and they never would. I decided that day to cut ties even further. I wasn't going to give them any more opportunities to pull me into their mess. My life in Indianapolis was good, and I wasn't about to let them ruin it. Whatever they wanted from me, closure, forgiveness, or return to normal, they weren't going to get it. I was done being the scapegoat, the one expected to keep the family together while everyone else did whatever they wanted. From now on, I was focusing on myself. They could keep their fake apologies and forced family unity. I didn't need any of it. By December, I was in a much better place emotionally and mentally. Life in Indianapolis was steady, and I had started dating Hunter, a 24-year-old man who quickly became my rock. He was everything I needed, kind, funny, supportive, and most importantly, he respected my boundaries. He knew about the mess with my family and never once pressured me to reconnect. Hunter's family lived in Chicago, and he invited me to spend Christmas with them. It was the first time in years that I was genuinely looking forward to the holidays. His parents were warm and welcoming. His siblings were great, and there was none of the tension and drama that had plagued my family gatherings for as long as I could remember. A week before Christmas, though, I got a letter in the mail. I almost ignored it because I didn't recognize the handwriting. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was from my dad. He wrote that Dana and Ethan had gotten married, and that my parents were now separated. He didn't go into detail about why, but he kept emphasizing how much the family needed me this Christmas. He begged me to come home, saying it could be a chance to heal and to move forward. I read the letter twice, trying to figure out what he was really asking for. Was this about me, or was it just another attempt to fix the mess Dana had created? The mention of their marriage made me sick to my stomach. It felt like a slap in the face, a reminder that they had moved on without a shred of remorse for what they'd done. When I showed the letter to Hunter, he suggested I let it go. "You don't owe them anything," he said gently. "If it's just going to hurt you, there's no reason to put yourself through that." He was right, of course, but a small part of me still felt guilty. Not for cutting them off, but for the fact that I couldn't shake the sense of obligation my dad always tried to instill in me. In the end, I decided to spend Christmas with Hunter's family. They lived in a cozy house in the suburbs of Chicago. And as soon as we arrived, I knew I had made the right choice. His parents greeted me with hugs, and his dad immediately started fussing over whether I liked hot chocolate or mulled cider better. It was simple and wholesome in a way I hadn't experienced in years. We spent Christmas Eve decorating the tree, baking cookies, and playing board games. It was the kind of holiday I'd always wanted, but never really had. For once, I wasn't waiting for some kind of argument to break out. Christmas morning was just as peaceful. Hunter's family had a tradition of opening presents in their pajamas, and they even had a stocking for me with my name on it. It was thoughtful, simple, and made me feel like I belonged. But even in the middle of all that warmth and happiness, the thought of my family lingered in the back of my mind. I couldn't help but wonder what they were doing, whether my dad was sitting alone in the house, whether my mom was celebrating at all, or whether Dana and Ethan were playing happy couple while the rest of them pretended everything was fine. I pushed the thoughts aside and focused on the moment. I wasn't going to let their drama ruin this for me. In January, just as I was settling back into my routine, I got an email from Matt. I hadn't heard from him in months, so seeing his name in my inbox was a surprise. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Matt wrote that my mom was now living in a motel, and Dana and Ethan were struggling financially. He didn't go into too much detail, but he hinted that Dana's work situation wasn't stable and that Ethan was apparently unhappy in their marriage. I stared at the screen, trying to figure out why Matt thought I needed to know any of this. Was he looking for sympathy? Did he expect me to swoop in and fix things? If so, he was going to be disappointed. I didn't respond to the email. What was I supposed to say? Sorry to hear that, but it's not my problem. I wasn't going to get dragged back into their mess no matter how bad things got for them. They had made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. Still, a part of me felt vindicated. They were struggling. And while I didn't take pleasure in their suffering, I couldn't help but feel like it was karma catching up to them. Dana and Ethan had destroyed my life, and now their perfect little bubble was starting to crack. Hunter noticed I was quieter than usual that evening and asked if everything was okay. I told him about the email, and he just nodded. His expression soft but firm. "You've done the hard work of moving on," he said. "Don't let them pull you back in." He was right. I had spent too much time rebuilding my life to let their problems derail me now. Whatever was happening with my family wasn't my responsibility anymore. The next morning, I deleted Matt's email and blocked his address. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wasn't going to let them use guilt or pity to worm their way back into my life. That Christmas with Hunter's family felt like a turning point. For the first time, I realized what it meant to be truly free of the toxicity I had grown up with. I didn't need my family's approval or their validation. I had found people who cared about me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. The chaos of my past wasn't going to define me anymore. I had built a new life, and I wasn't looking back. By the time June rolled around, I was feeling good about how far I'd come. My life in Indianapolis was stable. My relationship with Hunter was growing stronger every day, and my family was nothing but a distant memory. I had blocked them all, ignored every half-hearted attempt to reach out, and focused entirely on myself. But, of course, they weren't done with me. I was getting ready to head out for a run when I heard a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. And when I looked through the peephole, I froze. It was Matt. I hadn't seen him in over a year. And for a split second, I considered pretending I wasn't home. But eventually, I opened the door, and he immediately started crying. "Anna, I'm so sorry," he said, stepping into the hallway before I could invite him in. "I should have stood up for you more. I should have done more." His words caught me off guard. For so long, Matt had been this passive presence in my life. Someone who never outright hurt me, but never really defended me either. Hearing him take responsibility was unexpected, and I wasn't sure how to respond. "I cut ties with Dana and Ethan," he continued. "And Dad, I just couldn't take it anymore." I folded my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "What do you want, Matt?" He hesitated, wiping his eyes. "I just want to talk. Mom wants to talk too. Can we meet, please?" I should have said no. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to shut the door and move on with my day. But there was something about the way he looked at me, pleading, desperate, that made me pause. Against my better judgment, I agreed. A few days later, we met at a quiet diner on the edge of the city. Matt was already there when I arrived, sitting with our mom, Joan. I hadn't seen her since I punched her in the face outside Sam's apartment, and the tension between us was palpable. She stood up as I approached, extending a hand. I didn't take it. Instead, I sat down across from them and waited for one of them to speak. "I'm sorry," my mom said finally, her voice low, "for everything. I should have done more to protect you. I should have handled things differently." It wasn't much, but it was more than I expected. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be salvaged. Then the door to the diner opened, and my dad walked in. I tensed immediately, and my mom had the decency to look embarrassed. "He wanted to come," she said, as if that excused blindsiding me. And, of course, right behind him were Dana and Ethan. I stood up ready to leave, but Matt grabbed my arm. "Please, Anna, just hear them out." That was it for me. I stood up, cutting my dad off before he even started talking. "You're not my family anymore," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You want forgiveness? Find someone else to manipulate. I'm done." I threw some cash on the table for my coffee and walked out, ignoring the voices calling after me. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. They could beg, plead, and cry all they wanted, but I was done being the scapegoat for their dysfunction. Now at 28, I feel like I've lived several lifetimes since the chaos of my family unfolded. When I look back at everything that's happened, it almost doesn't feel real, like it was someone else's life. But the scars remind me it was all too real. The good news? I've come out stronger, wiser, and surrounded by people who actually care about me. Hunter and I got engaged last year. It was nothing fancy. Just the two of us at our favorite park in Indianapolis. I didn't go for some grand gesture because I'd learned that real love doesn't need a spectacle. When I asked him to marry me, he cried and said yes immediately. That moment felt like the final piece of the puzzle I'd been trying to solve since everything fell apart. He's not just my fiancé. He's my partner in every sense of the word. He supported me through all the ups and downs, listened without judgment, and never once tried to push me back toward the family I left behind. With him, I feel safe in a way I never thought possible after what Dana and Ethan did. The biggest news, though, we're expecting our first child. It's a girl. And every time I think about holding her for the first time, I get this overwhelming mix of excitement and nervousness. I never thought I'd be ready for motherhood after the mess I grew up in, but Hunter's confidence in us gives me hope. We're going to do everything we can to give our daughter a life full of love, respect, and stability, the kind of life I didn't have. One of the first steps I took toward completely cutting ties with my family was changing my last name. I didn't rush into it. For a while, I thought it might be too extreme or that it wouldn't make much of a difference. But as time went on, I realized that my last name felt like an anchor to the past, and I was ready to let it go. It was a strange feeling, standing in the courthouse and filling out the paperwork. When the judge signed off on it, I felt this unexpected sense of relief, like I'd finally closed a door I'd been afraid to shut completely. I chose a last name that felt meaningful to me, something tied to a personal hero rather than my family tree. Hunter was fully supportive. He even joked that he'd take my new last name once we got married, saying, "We're starting our own legacy now." That really stuck with me. The idea of creating something new, something separate from all the pain and betrayal became my focus. I've heard bits and pieces about what's been going on with my family since I cut them off. Not because I seek it out, but because mutual acquaintances sometimes slip up and mention it. Apparently, my parents are officially separated now. My mom is living in a tiny rental on the outskirts of town, and my dad is still in the family house trying to keep up appearances. Dana and Ethan? Let's just say karma hasn't been kind to them. They're drowning in debt. And from what I hear, their marriage is on shaky ground. Ethan lost his job, and Dana's work situation is far from stable. The irony isn't lost on me. After everything they did to tear me down, they're the ones struggling to keep their heads above water. As for Matt, his fiancée left him a few months before their wedding. I don't know the details, and honestly, I don't care to. He made his choice to stand by Dana and Ethan when it mattered most, and that's not something I can forgive. The last time I heard from any of them directly was over a year ago when my dad sent me another letter begging me to reconnect. I didn't even open it. I tossed it straight into the trash. Whatever regret they feel now is their burden to carry, not mine. One of the biggest lessons I've learned through all of this is the importance of setting boundaries. For so long, I let my family push me around, guilt me into forgiving them, and make me feel like their problems were my responsibility. Cutting them off wasn't easy. It was messy, but it was the only way to truly move forward. Sometimes I wonder if my family ever looks back and regrets their choices. Do they think about the pain they caused? Do they realize how much they lost by betraying me? I'll probably never know, and that's okay. Their regret or lack of it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I finally found peace. If anyone reading this is going through something similar, let me tell you. It's not easy to walk away from toxic relationships, especially when they're family. But sometimes, it's the only way to protect your peace and create the life you deserve. You're not obligated to keep people in your life just because of shared DNA. I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about the people who show up for you, support you, and love you unconditionally. And with Hunter by my side and our little one on the way, I finally have the family I've always wanted.